The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. I have so many jokes, but nonetheless, good morning, everybody. It is Monday, October 13th, and today is it's National Online Banking Day today, you guys.
Not for people in weed.
Not for indigenous people, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah, they all.
Not if you're making money on OnlyFans.
Yeah, well, Operation Choke Point, has a whole new meaning for that one. It's also National Kick Butt Day. They should just have it Kick Ass Day.
Yeah,
Kick Butt Day. Yeah.
Shouldn't we kick butt every day?
I'm all. Trust me, Jesse. I'm so about that life. Kick ass and take numbers every day.
That's right.
It's also Native American Day today.
Hi.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an 1/8 Cherokee. You can't tell by looking at me, but if you saw my grandma, you'd believe me.
It's the red hair, Jesse. That's where you get the red hair from.
No, but that's okay. You can think that.
I will.
They may qualify you for a license in some states.
Yeah,
I know that. Yeah, I know.
It's also Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day today. And speaking of the tatas, it is also National No Bra Day today.
All right. So it's breastastic, no bra?
Yeah, breastastic, no bra day. Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Somebody thought that one out.
I know. It's also Yorkshire Pudding Day.
I don't know what that is.
It's a pudding, Jesse. It's a dessert.
I know. Well, clearly that's in the name, but what's Yorkshire pudding?
It's from Yorkshire. You never been to Yorkshire? It's on the East Coast.
I'm pretty sure Yorkshire's in England.
That's east. That's still east, Jesse. It's still east.
And I would bet it's not a dessert. I'll bet it's like a meal, isn't it?
Okay,
you
so
know what? Hold on. Yeah, here we go.
Yorkshire
Hold on a
pudding
second.
Is a traditional British baked side dish made from a simple batter of eggs, flour, and milk.
Sounds desserty to me.
That sounds like one of those disgusting British foods that are nasty.
I think I've had this. A couple times in England.
Just eggs. It's basically eggs.
Yeah, no, they're actually pretty good. They're not bad. I'm not mad at these. Not mad at these.
It's like an egg cupcake.
Yeah, it's like a little breading. They're actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's probably all right.
It's one of the best things they have in the UK as far as food wise. They're not known for their food.
They don't have much.
No. It's also National Train Your Brain Day. And last but not least, it's also the Navy's birthday today, you guys. Yes, happy birthday, Navy. Yes. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.high9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And man, I'll tell you what, you guys, we're going to start the show off with a bang, and we are going to end it with a bang, because there's a Rhode Island couple that's challenged to law banning marijuana users from owning guns lands in appeals court, you guys. That's right. Should a federal law banning all unlawful users of controlled substances from owning guns apply to marijuana users, or does it violate their Second Amendment rights? That is the central issue in a case involving a Rhode Island couple facing charges that they broke the federal law as marijuana users. Cannabis, including its medical use, remains illegal under federal law, and though it has been legalized in Rhode Island and a host of other states. But U.S. District Court Judge John J. McConnell Jr. in February declared the law unconstitutional in clearing David Worcester and Alexandria Carl of the charge, ruling that it violated their Second Amendment rights. McConnell found that the sweeping law, in essence, bans all possession of firearms for an undefined set of controlled substance users, even while they are not actively intoxicated, and that federal prosecutors had not met their burden of showing that the law is consistent with the nation's historic firearms traditions. In a quote, "All that the government alleged was that Mr. Worcester had a medical marijuana card in his name, a small marijuana grow with 2 mature marijuana plants, and a small bag of dried marijuana at the time of the search. That tells the court little about his drug use, and most importantly, for the constitutional analysis, nothing suggests he was intoxicated at the time of his arrest," the ruling states. But under the government's reasoning, Congress could, if it wanted to, ban gun possession by anyone who has multiple alcoholic drinks a week from possessing guns based on intoxicated carry laws, the ruling continued. The court also dismissed charges that Carl had made false statements while purchasing a firearm by failing to report regular marijuana use, and McConnell, however, let stand the charges against Worcester, accusing him of being a felon illegally in possession of a firearm. But what led to the charges, you ask? Well, according to court documents, federal authorities intercepted 2 packages from China containing gun silencers in 2021, one of which was headed for Worcester's address and the other to Carl's in Pawtucket. A search of Carl's residence found guns, gun parts, and ammunition manufactured outside of Rhode Island, as well as a medical marijuana card in Worcester's name. Authorities said, and a grand jury indicted the couple on multiple charges, including of violating the law prohibiting all unlawful users of controlled substances from owning guns. Worcester had previously been convicted in Massachusetts on felony charges, and investigators alleged that Carl told them she occasionally used marijuana, though she did not indicate that she did not indicate that on the application to acquire a gun. Lawyers for Worcester and Carl challenged the constitutionality of the firearms ban, while McConnell ruling in their favor, but federal prosecutors appealed that case because the U.S. Attorney's Office appealed the ruling of the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals arguing that Worcester and Carl fall outside of the Second Amendment's protections based on historically based laws restricting the rights of habitual drug users or alcoholics to carry firearms. The temporary disarmament of a discrete group of individuals for the purpose of public safety is a constitutional, legitimate legislative remedy well supported by law as well as common sense, prosecutors argued. But Worcestershire counters that McConnell got it right, that the government had failed to show that the challenged law is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation, or that Worcester and Carl posed a danger based on marijuana use. And his lawyer, George J. West, wrote, Carl has not yet responded to the government's arguments. But the ACLU also backs this challenge, and the state affiliate of the American Civil Liberties Union weighed in on October 8th with a friend of the court brief in support of Worcester and Carl's challenge to the federal law that bars unlawful users of controlled substances, including marijuana, from possessing firearms. The ACLU argues that the law has applied to Worcester and Carl violates the Second Amendment because it would disarm them and all other users of marijuana, regardless of whether their use renders their possession of firearms dangerous. The appellees have a constitutional right to possess firearms and ammunition while users of marijuana, and the brief states, and the government, the ACLU argues, does not identify any study or report that says a person in possession of a firearm is per se more dangerous if he is a user of marijuana. The brief notes that 6 other federal appeals courts have also held the law is unconstitutional, and if it is appealed per se to bar firearm possession by marijuana user, it states. The government wants to enforce a statute that makes possession of a firearm a crime by anyone who uses marijuana in any way without any showing that the combination is dangerous, and that violates the Second Amendment. Thomas W. Lyons, who with the Renanon Huffman is representing Worcester and Carl on behalf of the ACLU, said in a statement. It should be abundantly clear that it is grossly unfair to bar a person from owning a firearm solely because of their lawful use of marijuana, regardless of one's position on the gun control debate. We hope that the appeals court will agree, and the ACLU of Rhode Island Executive Director Stephen Brown added that the ACLU has been on the forefront of challenging the criminalization of marijuana possession and what it calls the gross racial disparity in arrests and incarceration of racial minorities in Rhode Island, and it is among the organizations that advocated for the legalization of medical marijuana and adult use marijuana possession and the creation of marijuana dispensaries, even as cannabis remains illegal under federal law. In 2022, Rhode Island became the 19th state to legalize adult use cannabis, you guys. Well. Shoot 'em up, bang, bang. I happen to agree with the ACLU finally on something, and I'm finally happy to see them doing something that is worthwhile. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
The ACLU gets it right on weed a lot.
Yes, but
it's one of the things that they actually get things right on.
To hear them arguing for gun rights, I find extremely amusing, and I'm glad to find that they're on the right side of the law on this one, and you know what I'm saying, that they're standing up for these guys' rights. So I'm in support of them on this one. I think it's great.
This isn't the first time they've done this. So this exact area, when it comes to the Constitution and our constitutional rights and being a cannabis consumer, they fall on the right side. And this is when the ACLU is doing what it should be doing.
I mean, this is an issue that we've seen for several years, where veterans, for instance, who are very much in need of cannabis, have had to decide whether they want to address their PTSD or continue to have a gun. And it's been a real problem, and I'm glad to see where this court is headed. But we've seen it come up in the hemp industry a lot.
Without a doubt. Michael, what are you going to say about this, Michael?
Yeah, this is great. Hopefully they stay in line. We know the 11th Circuit, a month or so ago, considered the same type of ruling and found that the government had to find something from our founding father days as to determine whether or not they've ever actually disarmed anybody for just using a substance versus being under the influence while possessing a gun. Those are two different things, and it seems like this court is going to delineate those as well. And then the question is going to be, I know there's been a few petitions, or I don't know if they've been filed yet. U.S. attorneys throughout the country have said that they're going to seek Supreme Court review of these issues as well. So we'll see if the U.S. Supreme Court ends up hearing up this issue.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think if the Supreme Court ends up taking up this issue, the government is going to get it handed to them. I mean, I think Clarence Thomas has been waiting for a case like this to come across their desk. And so, I hope that it does go to the Supreme Court. I'm all in favor of that. I'm so here for that.
Yeah, it will definitely settle things through the land. And, when I talk to clients about this issue, I usually tell them the biggest problem is that question on the ATF transfer form, which asks you, are you addicted to drugs, including cannabis in legal states? So I think it's great that they didn't find that them saying no created a separate avenue of perjury or anything of that nature for them. But it is probably one of the most common questions that we get here in the state.
And, I have to imagine Rhode Island that silencers are illegal to possess in Rhode Island. I would just take an educated guess at that. I do find it interesting that that's how they got caught sending silencers to their house. That to me is a interesting twist in the case that I don't know. Do you think that'll be a variable point in any of this? You guys?
I don't.
No? Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. We're going to keep this train moving. We're going to roll right into our first commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Introduce Gary to the audience.
Oh yeah. Well, I am going to introduce Gary.
I know, but they've never seen him before, so they don't even.
You know what? Fair enough, Jesse. I do want to send a warm welcome to Mr. Gary Kaminsky. Did I get that correct, Gary? Your last name? Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
All right. Gary Kaminsky. Gary Kaminsky has been working with a number of different MSO companies throughout the years. He's also a New York-based lawyer. And so we want to welcome Gary to the show, and he's going to bring a wealth of information and insight to us on Mondays. And so, Gary, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you here with us.
Thanks for having me. Excited.
Yes, sir. And man, you guys, oh boy, Jesse, you're gonna love this. You're gonna wish you lived in Oklahoma after you hear this story, Jesse.
No, I won't.
Because there's a lawsuit challenging Oklahoma's marijuana tax, and they want everyone to be reimbursed, you guys. That's right. 2 Oklahoma residents are challenging that the 7% marijuana tax is illegal, and they want every patient who's paid to be reimbursed. Adrian Keith Johnson and Tracy Neely filed a lawsuit in Oklahoma County against the Oklahoma Tax Commission and State Treasurer. The lawsuit claims that the 7% excise tax on medical marijuana sales is unconstitutional based on Oklahoma's strict rules about creating new taxes. And they also suggested a fix: the creation of a refund program that will return more than $1 billion with a B dollars to patients who paid it. The lawsuit claims that with compounded interest, Oklahoma's tax commission has collected more than $1 billion from patients buying medical marijuana, and their numbers don't add up, though, because each month the OTC publishes details about medical marijuana tax revenue. From 2018 until the end of September of 2025, the state has collected only $337 million from the excise tax, about 1/3 of what they're asking. And excise tax is separate than the retail sales tax collected by the state and local governments. But Tulsa attorney R. Charles Winkflin filed the lawsuit for Johnson and Neely, and he did not return a call asking for comment. But how marijuana is taxed in Oklahoma, because when a licensed patient buys medical marijuana from a dispensary, the dispensary is responsible for collecting 3 separate taxes. An excise tax of 7%, and the medical marijuana excise tax was created to offset the cost of running the state's medical marijuana program. Then there's a state sales tax of 4.5%, and Oklahoma currently levies a 4.5% tax on all sales, whether you're buying cannabis, electronics, foods, or anything else like that. And then there's a local tax, which will vary from cities and counties, and they can implement their own sales tax rate. In Oklahoma City, it comes out to 4.125% of each purchase. But when voters first approved the State Question 788 to legalize medical marijuana, the excise tax was earmarked directly for regulation of the industry under the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, and any surplus funds would be sent to education and substance abuse programs. Lawmakers have since altered that formula twice. Now the OMMA is funded separately by fees and fines, and the 7% excise tax currently is only used for substance abuse and education programs administered by other state agencies. Those funds are to be spent at the legislature's discretion, and the lawsuit claims tax was illegally collected And the main argument presented in the lawsuit is that Oklahoma's laws and prior court rulings about creating a new tax make the 7% excise tax collection unconstitutional. But because that money isn't tied to a specific purpose, in this case, the regulation of the industry, they claim it violates the rules. Its design and use demonstrate a primary purpose to raise general revenue, subjecting the levy and its legislative amendments to Oklahoma's Constitution's revenue bill requirements, the lawsuit states. The Constitution requires that every tax shall specify distinctly the purpose for which said tax is levied, and the lawsuit claims that by giving the legislature some discretion on how to spend the money, it violates the law. Wilkin also argues that the Oklahoma law generally exempts the purchases of medicine from state sales tax, and in a quote they say, "The state nonetheless imposes a unique additional 7% excise tax on this class of medical purchases to fund broad government purposes unrelated to regulating patient purposes," he wrote. The petitioners have requested that the court certify the lawsuit as a class action so that patients can be reimbursed for the tax that they claim was illegally collected, and the state is preparing its response to the marijuana tax lawsuit, and the Oklahoma County District Court has given the state until October 15th to file its reply. The lawsuit specifically names the Oklahoma Tax Commission and Oklahoma Treasurer, and a spokesperson for the Treasurer, Todd Russ, said the office does not comment on pending litigation. The OTC did not respond to the Oklahoma's request for a comment in this article as well, and if the case proceeds, the court will have to determine whether to create a class of individuals who would benefit from a tax reimbursement, and it would then officially become a class action lawsuit. Well, you guys. Oh man, Oklahoma. They got some patriotic patients out there trying to fight this unjust tax, and I'm totally with them on this. I hope they're successful on this. I don't think they will be, but I hope that they are. I seriously doubt they will be. California, they say that they don't tax medicine, but they said that medical cannabis is taxable. So I anticipate whatever rule that made that allowable is what they're going to fall on in Oklahoma. So, but we shall see. What do you guys think?
Yeah, definitely interesting. And I got to say, I think that that's the one thing that we did in Florida with our medical marijuana program correct, was the no taxation on patients. But, you know, I think in Oklahoma, it sounds like it continues to become a cannabis discrimination issue, right? So cannabis patients are treated differently than any other patients, where they have insurance paying for it and, you know, exorbitant prices on medicine that kills you as opposed to medicine that helps you. So I wish them the best.
I mean, the tax on marijuana products in licensed markets is a real issue, obviously, because the cost of the products is outrageous. I mean, New York's a good example of that, where you're paying $58 for an eighth of pretty shitty weed. But, you know, the interesting thing I find about this situation is that it is the tax that can be the hook to get people who aren't in favor of marijuana to vote for it, because they find that as an incentive to allow the program in states that obviously need revenue. And if the revenue is actually utilized in an effective way, as opposed to a discretionary way that maybe it's not going directly to do to something that is related to marijuana, it is obviously problematic, and we don't want to have expensive weed. But on the other hand, I think that the only way we're going to get marijuana approved across this country is to have that hook of some tax generation because of the consumer demand for the product.
I mean, have you seen any state market that has you know, appropriated the taxes appropriately?
Well,
yeah, Montana.
They have?
Okay. Yeah, Montana actually did some really cool stuff with the cannabis taxes.
Interesting.
They funded a bunch of Forest Service activities that, I mean, basically what it does is it fuels tourism. So tourists come for Yellowstone Park and Glacier National Park. So what they did is they took the taxes and they funded those areas and cleanup and trail maintenance and things like that. Which is pretty cool.
Oklahoma is one of the most challenging jurisdictions where we've seen illegal black market flower transporting across the country. And if they had used that money or were using that money to enforce against the Chinese cartels that have set up camp there, it might be a positive thing.
That's an interesting point. That is an interesting point because they do have a lot of illicit activity happening out there in Oklahoma. That is for sure. I'm not a proponent of taxing medicine. If we're going to call it a medicine, I don't believe that there should be any tax involved on that. Whether it's
is this a medical tax or is it
they only have medical
adult use?
They don't have adult use out
in
there
Oklahoma.
Like that. Yep, strictly medical. This is strictly for medical.
And that gets to the issue of what marijuana is, right? Is marijuana a medicine? Is it a wellness product?
It should be wellness.
We flip-flop back and forth depending on which is best for our argument, I think.
Well, at the same time, I'm a firm believer, at least myself, Gary, that all use is medical use. And, even if you're not using it for medical purposes, you're still obtaining medical benefits. But a lot of times it's just in the wording of however legislatures legislate it or these initiatives are written, that the voters vote on it. And that's ultimately, to me, the only deciphering point as to whether or not it'll be considered medical or adult use.
Would you consider alcohol a medicine? And I think that's a rhetorical question. Right?
So alcohol that is sold at CVS, that is clear, that is for like cleaning wounds, I would consider medical. But now if we're talking about wines and spirits and stuff like that are sold in branded bottles, I'm going to say no, that's not for medical use.
Right. I guess my point in asking that is that I see marijuana, I see cannabis sativa L as a wellness product.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
I agree
that
with
it
that.
rises to the level of a medical product on the levels that we see. Obviously, Epidiolex is thousands of times stronger than anything you get on the market, and that becomes medicinal. But, I'm not sure that 20% flour should be deemed a medical product.
Well, if you have epilepsy, it sure is.
Again, that would be true. And that's kind of I've watched this happen, when I was first in the industry back in 2018 at public companies that were coming out. They didn't know whether to call it a medicine or a wellness product because they didn't know if it was going to cause them problems with the FDA and otherwise. So I don't know. There's no doubt that cannabis sativa L has great benefits, some of which could be medicinal, but as a wellness product, it clearly is a beneficial item.
You're right. It should be the brand of weed and the way that people perceive it should be as a wellness product primarily, and an industrial product because the fiber in the oil is so good for so many things. And the medical use is really the minority of what it can do, but it does have some incredible medical uses, and those shouldn't be overlooked, that they're nearly miraculous. I've personally seen someone who's been undergoing a grand mal seizure hit a CBD vape pen and immediately stop the seizure. So that kind of usage.
We've also seen, and Jesse, we've also seen success on high dosages of THC for cancer.
Like direct injection of THC and CBD right to a cancer cell will kill it. We know that. So there's definitely some incredible medical uses, but in general, it is a wellness plant. I agree with that.
And look, again, just to reiterate that, it's the challenge of what's best for us, what we're going to call it. It's medical marijuana in the 38 states that exist, or whatever the number is. Maybe it's 44. I don't remember what it is at this point. But, they're using that term, medical. But, doctors aren't prescribing it for obvious reasons because it's federally illegal. So it's a very complex issue.
Well, you brought up the right point, though, earlier when you said taxes are used to sell this, right? So, like, the whole transition of the way that this came about, starting almost 40 years ago, maybe even it was 40 years ago, it was taxes was one way that they sold it, and another was it was medical, right? That was the branding that allowed it to be sold to the American people starting in California. So, and calling it medical and making it medical and making that it was about HIV and it was about cancer and it was about all these other illnesses. Those are the things that allowed people to have the empathy to go, oh, yeah, we should allow that. We should allow people with HIV and with cancer to have cannabis. And that was the slow roll that started this whole ball rolling, right? So now we're decades later, and we're going, wait, this branding actually doesn't work. This perception doesn't work. It's not actually complete. It doesn't actually fit. The definitions are off. They don't really, it doesn't suit what's going on. And now we want to change it, but it's very difficult, right? Because the American people have accepted the term medical marijuana.
Well, yeah.
And I was totally, Oklahoma has the most liberal medical cannabis program in the nation because I thought it was recreational the way that it rolls out. I just assumed that for all these years, for a long time. So I did not even know that. No, because they have so many dispensaries and it's so easy to go into one.
Well, it was easy to get a license. You know what I mean? $1,250
get
bucks.
A license like
$2,500
I just assumed that was a recreational program.
No, man. I mean, but at the same time, Jesse, all use is medical use. You know what I mean?
Well, I was going to say that too, but it's crazy that they're taxing something that they call medical. That's insane.
And just to bring it back to your initial question, Gary, when you asked if I consider alcohol a medicine, I want to throw in one other medicine of alcohol because I happen to agree with this one. OG Grandma in the chat, he says, is brandy from a St. Bernard's little jug hanging around his neck medicine? And I would happen to agree that would be medicine as well. Because any cartoon that you saw, they'd be knocked out in the snow, and all of a sudden they drink that brandy out of that jug from the St. Bernard, and all of a sudden they're up and ready to go all over again. It's like Popeye spinach.
It was a medicine for Walgreens during the 30s during Prohibition.
See what I'm saying, Michael?
Well, I mean that's kind of the point, right? Is we call it what we need to call it in order to get where we want to get. But in this country, if I'm not mistaken, if it were a medicine, the FDA would have dealt with it, and they have not. So it's almost like a chicken or egg. It's like, how can it be a medicine if the FDA isn't regulating it? And the FDA has punted on this whole thing.
The FDA, though, only really regulates single compound products. And
right.
so it's kind of out of their jurisdiction already with that, which is one of the things that I have the whole problem with Schedule 3 with is the fact that they only regulate by the molecule as opposed to regulating by the substance, and so the FDA has a real problem with that. They can't wrap their heads around multi molecule products.
And
we have a long way to go with that. The branding, I bring it up as branding because branding is the way we perceive things, and there's this brand of the way that cannabis is perceived in the country, and I was just talking about this the other day with someone where we don't even understand, we can't even study cannabinoids in our livestock meats and milks, and what would happen to our bodies if we were getting them that way like we historically used to. And then eating it raw, having plenty of hemp seeds and eating the raw flowers and leaves in salads. And then on top of that, eating it cooked So we don't understand what it even is to have a complete cannabinoid diet, even though we have an endocannabinoid system that's designed to interface with these cannabinoids. We don't even get, those of us who smoke it and eat edibles, we still don't get raw cannabinoids. So we don't even know what our bodies do when that happens.
Fair enough. Anything you want to throw in on this, Michael, before we move on?
Just to say, you know, this is a plant, it's an agricultural commodity, and I think we should start treating it more like that, as a wellness product, as a natural supplement. Just like so many things that we can grow in our backyard that can do that, and that's really how this should be treated.
Fair enough, fair enough. And on that, we're going to roll right into attorney at law, Mr. Michael Minardi. Michael Minardi is out there in the great red state of Florida, helping patients, advocates, businesses, whether you're cannabis or hemp, all stay compliant and navigate the complex system that Florida is constantly creating. You can find him at his law office at Minardi Law. It is none other than Mr. Michael Minardi.
Good morning to everyone on the West Coast, and happy high noon to everyone on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Exciting things going on today. Target begins selling THC beverages at 10 Minnesota stores. That's right. Target. Getting into the industry. The limited rollout includes a dozen brands, among them Can, Wink, Stigma, Wonder, Senorita, Wild, Trail Magic, Birdie, Shirley Gill, High Seltzer, and Indeed. 10 Target stores in the Twin Cities regions are part of a pilot launch which places the beverages on shelves alongside more traditional drinks. The move comes as congressional lawmakers consider legislation that would prohibit hemp-derived products, with Senator Ron Paul saying last month that he's very fearful a nationwide hemp ban could be approved within a matter of weeks. At the state level, lawmakers continue to place their own bans on restrictions on hemp-derived THC. For example, Ohio's governor just signed an executive order temporarily banning products with high hemp THC. In this week, a coalition of 14 lawmakers in Wisconsin filed legislation to establish a similar but permanent ban. A representative from Target told Marijuana Herald that the launch of THC beverages in Minnesota is a pilot program. If successful, the company plans to expand the products into more stores across Minnesota and other states where hemp THC is allowed under the law. This is great. You know, I love to say it loud under the law, but it is federally legal, and it's no longer a controlled substance federally. So, I don't know how they're going to deal with interstate commerce issues, but this is something that should be everywhere. It should be sold in stores, and this isn't even one that's a 21 plus store, like, you know, a lot of states want to do because they're afraid of the children getting it. So we'll see how it goes, but hopefully it's a successful pilot program that expands throughout the country.
Man, Target beverages making a comeback, Michael. What is happening? You know, they get all these bans all of a sudden, and now all of a sudden Target is item and going to carry them, and they're going to have probably in the kids section, kids just running around drinking cannabis beverages, bouncing on bouncy balls and shit.
I'm guaranteed. Those 7 to 10-year-olds, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Man. Gary, I know you have a lot to say about this one because you've consulted with a number of hemp beverage companies and whatnot over the years.
I mean, I think that, well, as Michael knows, we're experiencing this in Florida and have for some time. Total Wine and more have a whole THC section in Coconut Grove. The Fresh Market, which is a mainstream grocery store, has a THC section. THC beverages are being sold in many kind of more conventional retail outlets here in Florida. Minnesota is the leader in hemp and has been since they mistakenly legalized it a couple years ago and then caught up. So,
mistakenly?
Well, not mistakenly from our perspective, but I'm not so sure that the legislators at the time that they legalized intoxicants realized what they were doing.
Oh, I think they did.
That's a separate discussion. But the reality is Minnesota is a wonderful state, probably the best state for the hemp industry in terms of it's embracing it. And Target in Minnesota makes a lot of sense. The ironic thing about this is it comes at a point when you have a number of legislators spewing kind of misrepresentations and misinformation about what is going on and the risks of this substance across the country in order to potentially close what they're calling the loophole of the Farm Bill. Additionally, you've got the Ohio situation from last week. And you got Gavin Newsom a couple years ago with these executive orders that just unconstitutionally decide we're just not going to allow a product to be sold that is part of a multi-billion-dollar industry that's being sold direct to consumer online and et cetera. So to me, while it is remarkable that Target is doing it, it's not surprising in the state of Minnesota, and it's more remarkable that it comes at a time when the hemp industry is as at risk as it's ever been. And I've been actively involved with hemp producers since 2018, watching the developments of this and always wondering, can we raise capital? But when there's a risk of, a stroke of a pen ending your industry. And how are you going to navigate a 50-state regulatory scheme, even though it's federally legal? And that, coupled with what Target is doing, is extremely interesting to me, and I'm very excited that Target would do this. So I applaud it.
I think it's very interesting. I wonder, do they only have 17 stores in the state of Minnesota? Is that why they're doing it in 17 stores?
I don't know that. I would be surprised, right? Only 17 stores. That's a big state, but maybe.
I think it's just because they're doing it a pilot project, so they're probably just rolling it out slowly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Select markets.
What I'd be interested in, have always been interested in, is how Total Wine got comfortable. Because to be honest, they got comfortable doing it in states where it wasn't even legal, like California, like Massachusetts.
Isn't Total Wine owned by Constellation?
Excuse me?
Isn't Total Wine owned by Constellation?
I don't think so. I think it's owned by a family out of Maryland, but I do not know.
I think there's some connection there with Constellation and Total Wine. I could be mistaken, so don't hold that.
It's a family-owned. Nope, he's right. It's a family-owned business.
Okay, all right, interesting.
Yeah, but they've had some big balls, and it's exciting. I mean, like I said, you walk into a Total Wine in Florida, you've got probably 30 to 50 SKUs of beverages. Now, in the Target example that you just described, it's interesting that you have some of these beverages like Senorita, which is owned by an MSO, basically. It's owned by GTI. So you got somebody playing on both sides. And that was an interesting development that occurred over the last year, where the MSOs who've been fighting this have joined.
Yeah, it is funny to watch the MSOs on this, because they'll go for it when it's good, and then they'll want to ban it in other places when they get threatened by it, because they want to keep certain prices in certain markets artificially high for whatever reason and whatnot. And man, Michael, what do you think about this? Are they putting is Target putting a target on their back by doing this?
Hopefully they are, and hopefully the target is, hopefully they're putting a target on the back saying, hey, listen, us major companies want to get involved in this. We can do it right, just like we sell alcohol. So let us do it. And that's exactly how it should be. Again, it's this fallacy that hemp and these beverages, even though they're intoxicating, it's still not a controlled substance at this point in the state or the country. It's federally legal. It's removed from the Controlled Substance Act, so it should be treated like it is. And instead of continuing to have all these gated aging and all these excuses as to why it shouldn't be legal.
Did the article talk about how big this section was going to be and how many brands that they were going to be carrying?
I listed those brands, and I think it was 10 different brands or so that they had listed there. It's funny because I was at a conference last week in Hollywood, and the Curaleaf Hemp company was there. Yeah. So
I was at the same conference. Yeah, they had two booths right across from each other. Yeah, and Curaleaf opened up the hemp store in Palm Beach. Right, they closed one of their dispensaries and opened up a hemp dispensary. And Florida smoke shops have been, while we're on that subject, have been extremely aggressive over the years over the last several years in terms of the hemp products they have. But they've had to cut down because FDAX has started to enforce their own rules in terms of certain things and have been able to take certain things off the shelves because they aren't compliant with labeling, packaging, and attractive to children. But it's not because they're intoxicating. And that's really the confusion here, is that the Farm Bill, the people that are trying to shut this down seem to suggest that Mitch McConnell did not want to create intoxicants. Yet the statute is completely clear, in my opinion. And also, the issue that we have, to get back to something you said, Jason, is Target putting a target on their back. It's not clear to me who's shooting. The state of Minnesota is not going to do anything about it. It's not clear to me that the feds even know how to do anything about it because, as Michael said, it is federally legal. So are you going to go at it from an FTC perspective, saying that there's some sort of dangerous substance? They've tried to latch on to synthetics and say that the process that is being used to make some of these products is unsafe, yet they ignore the fact that I have yet to find a marijuana regulatory mandate that describes how you're supposed to extract into final products. So that is arguably unsafe as well. It's no different. And, it's the kind of thing where they keep saying, oh, hemp is unregulated. Well, it's not unregulated. If it were unregulated, I wouldn't have a job. It's because it's regulated different ways in different states that us compliance geeks have a lot of fun navigating this stuff.
Interesting.
I'm curious, did Target just become the largest multi-state operator in the country?
Nah, they're only selling beverages, right?
I know, but all they have to do is start distributing to every store in the nation, and all of a sudden they're the biggest weed distributor in the country.
Well, yeah, and that's true. But look, that would be a fun job to be in-house at Target because, like I said, Minnesota is the most welcoming jurisdiction that you could have for this product. But you Target in different places, like even Target in Florida, you may have issues with regard to state agencies that oversee pharmacies and things. So it's not clear to me that you could just roll this out in every Target in every state. There are
all the ones that haven't banned hemp, right? So because this is a Farm Bill product.
Yeah, they in essence could. They very well could. You're right about that, Jesse. They could just roll this all out in throughout the entire country, pretty much for the most part. Besides like Ohio or California and a few other states that have enacted different hemp over the counter bans. But at the same time too, what would to stop them from just storing it in a warehouse and doing it for what do they have, Target on the go when they deliver it to your house?
Yeah, this is amazing.
If Target then gets involved in the lawsuits in these states and starts putting pressure on the legislatures, to change those things,
exactly.
It's very interesting. So just having one of those big boys in it and just getting the information out for everybody that this is a safe product that they're willing to carry, I think is absolutely wonderful. And in Florida, it's the THCA issue, which is really the only product that they really go after FDAX, but you can have edibles with no limit on them here in the States still. So in that really regime change, I think started when Commissioner Simpson came in and Commissioner Agriculture Nikki Fried left. It totally changed the whole framework of how the hemp industry was treated here in the state. So hopefully that'll change soon.
Well, and Florida, as I'm sure you guys spoke about last year, is just a very ironic place because you've got a governor that hates intoxicating cannabis sativa L, yet he vetoed a bill that would have eliminated that in hemp stores because he got an agreement for them to vote against adult use.
Yep.
So, and you've got a state where I mean, where I live is a very kind of quasi, or was historically a quasi bohemian area, and my organic farmers market, I can name 3 or 4 actual vendors that are selling products ranging from pre-rolls to gummies to triptacs, which is LSD. So it gets to a question, to get back, Jason, to your, is there a target on their back?
Hold on.
Nobody's enforcing it.
You're going into regular retail stores and buying triptacs?
Wait,
First of all,
what location are you at that you're seeing triptacs?
I'm not buying it. I'm talking about a farmer's market.
A farmer's market?
Where are you?
Farmer's market where I can buy chocolate mushrooms, triptacs, infused beverages, as well as all kinds of THCA flower. And that is just, that's Miami. I'll tell you.
I'm setting up a booth at this farmer's market.
I'm down here during Art Basel.
Oh, Art Basel for sure, yeah.
Called Turf Basel.
Yeah.
And Turf Basel is a farmer's market of Cali curated amazing products.
Yeah, that's a big trap sesh. We get it, but we're talking about you're talking about a regular farmer's market every Sunday or every Saturday, every Tuesday night. Yeah. Wow.
It's usually at all the conferences too, and they have the road trip gummies as well, which they supposedly don't test positive for psilocybin. There are different tryptamine that they're using in them. You have the other chocolate companies that are just putting mushroom superfood chocolate on it and things. And these are really high quality products. A lot of them are, and they are everywhere in this state. It's absolutely amazing.
Wow.
To see sometimes.
This is and yet FDAX goes into a Total Wine and says that a label is attractive to children and embargoes it when it's like a 3 milligram THC product.
Wow.
So it's just, and that is cannabis. That's cannabis regulation in a nutshell. Which is why I answer your question: is there a target on target's back? Not unless Donald J. Trump decides that he wants to go after him, which he could if he wanted to.
He's not going to do that.
I mean, it's an adulteration. Technically, no matter what the Farm Bill says, FDA says that if you infuse it into food or beverage, it's a violation of the FD&C Act.
Well, the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetic, yeah. I mean, but I don't believe that they have jurisdiction over it yet. Not as cannabis sativa L being a controlled substance and it having the same definition in the Farm Bill. So therefore, the FDA doesn't really have jurisdiction over that.
The Farm Bill specifically gives them jurisdiction.
Yeah, no, they do. They do have jurisdiction. I agree, Mike.
I don't know.
And I think the real problem in this country with the hemp industry is that they haven't gotten off their ass and created nationwide labeling and regulations for it, which they should do so. And I think that federal legislatures pushed them to do so for years now.
And that's the thing that, I'm very friendly with Rod Kite, who's written a lot on this. Rod wrote the opinion for cookies so they can sell THCA flower. But Rod's whole point has long been, we want regulation, age-gate it, test, and let's come up with regulatory processes. We're not trying to do that. The people that are doing the bathtub gin type stuff are not our constituents.
Fair enough.
Putting it in the Skittles type packages and stuff are not good actors, and they're the ones that really should be weeded out.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Every legend has a humble beginning.
In world news, leaders are gathering today for the annual summit.
I want to tell you something, Che. The government is watching us through the television.
Oh, John.
Look, right there. They're trying to hack into my TV box.
We're still not able to hack into the TV box, sir.
Ha! But they can't.
I've rebuilt the entire electronic system, and it sends and receives signals through quantum phase space. They'll never get in. Engage target.
In other news, local authorities are investigating a series of strange atmospheric phenomena reported by residents.
Ma'am, we're with the federal government. We need to ask you some questions.
John?
Is there a problem?
We've been trying to penetrate your TV box for over 6 months.
Here in Florida, even though I went into a smoke shop to get rolling.
Oh, and we are back, you guys. Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And also, too, make sure that that you check out our 9/11 special video with Congressman Kurt Weldon and Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, where we talk about all of everything that happened and didn't happen on 9/11. And also, too, this is for cannabis related, non-cannabis related. If you are in need of a federal pardon, I have assembled a top-notch legal team to be able to execute that for you guys. So if you are in need of a federal pardon, make sure that you reach out to me, because I can definitely help you, assist with you on achieving that goal.
Introducing QUX Pay, or simply the Pay app,
where you can pay like it's nobody's business.
Because it isn't. It's what everyone's been clamoring for. It's finally here.
Secure every payment. Your data stays private. QUX will never sell your data for profit, period. Pay friends, family, contacts instantly. No hidden fees. No limits. Spend on the move.
With this patented technology, you can use debit, credit, bank transfers, cash cards, and even crypto completely offline.
Amounts transferred through the Pay app reach their destination instantly. Transfers in a flash. As quick as sending a text. No more waiting around like crypto. Are you ready for the future of payments? The state of the art for money is finally here.
Data privacy and security protocols trusted by militaries and banks worldwide. QUX Pay, the Pay app.
Available as an app and point of sale system, personal and corporate accounts available. Go to QUXPay.com and start using the Pay app today.
There we go. There we go. And we are back, and we are going to roll right in to Mr. Jesse Barney. He's the founder of Barney Design Co. that can help take your brand to the highest plateau. He specializes in graphic design, marketing, and telling you what your brand is really trying to tell your customer. That's right. It is none other than Mr. Jesse Barney.
Thank you, Jason. Lovely intro. I hope I do okay this morning. I partied my ass off with Uncle Laser at a comedy show last night.
Get it, bro.
So I'm the kind of hungover where I think I might actually just still be a little drunk.
You can go take a nap after the show, Jesse.
I have to go to work, but that's okay. But my story comes out of Michigan, and we're following this story pretty closely because the 24% state excise tax is crazy. But a Michigan marijuana group sues to block the new tax central to the road funding deal. Just hours after a 24% wholesale tax on marijuana was signed into law, a group representing Michigan's cannabis industry sued the state, seeking to block the tax's implementation. The Michigan Cannabis Industry Association alleges that the new tax is unconstitutional because it improperly alters the 2018 ballot measure that legalized the drug for Michigan adults. The tax is a pillar of state lawmakers' efforts to increase funding for Michigan's ailing roads and was a key portion of a bipartisan compromise on the state's newly enacted $81 billion budget. Fiscal analysts, whoops. See, there's that last night partying coming up. Fiscal analysts estimate the tax, which is levied on marijuana and related products before they hit dispensary shelves, could generate, guess the number, $420 million a year in additional revenue. Lawyers representing the association want a court of claims judge to completely block implementation of the new law, arguing lawmakers improperly changed the voter-approved law that legalized recreational marijuana use and its sale in Michigan. In a statement, Doug Maines, a lawyer representing the association, called the creation of the new tax a last-minute, late-night process that occurred in violation of a range of other constitutional provisions. Spokespeople for the House Speaker Matt Hall and Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks didn't respond to requests for comment Wednesday. Under Michigan's constitution, amending a voter-approved law requires support of 3/4 of the legislature. The tax passed the Senate 19-17 and the House 78-21, both short of that threshold. The new law creating the tax doesn't directly amend the statute, though, and calls itself the Comprehensive Road Funding Tax Act. The cannabis industry attorneys assert that the new tax is simply trying to get around amending the original legalization statute. Legislative authority over marijuana excise taxes is exclusive to the legislation law, or the legalization law, they wrote. Additional excise taxes require a direct amendment to the legalization law itself. The lawyers argue that any additional taxes on marijuana must be approved by voters or a legislative supermajority because of how the original law was enacted. Lawmakers have made similar moves before. In a previous interview with Bridge, Michigan attorney Steve Liddell noted state lawmakers wrote new laws to legalize sports betting in Michigan in 2019 without altering a voter-initiated gaming control law from 1996. The new tax is scheduled to take effect January 1st. Supporters of the tax have argued it does not affect the legalization law because it applies the tax on marijuana businesses before the product reaches consumers who pay a 10% excise tax on retail sales, part of which already goes toward road funding. Governor Gretchen Whitmer quipped in 2019 while pushing for a 45 cents per gallon gas tax increase for road repairs that every resident in the state would have to consume $2,500 worth of marijuana products a year to cover a funding shortfall. At that level, no one is going to care about the damn roads, she said. The tax represents more than a fifth of money policymakers have either raised or redirected toward road repairs and was a centerpiece of the bipartisan agreement, part of a $2 billion per year funding increase at the center of last month's fraught budget negotiations. Marijuana industry representatives and cannabis advocates criticized the tax well before it became law, saying it would make the state less competitive and encourage consumers to source the drug from the black market, where there is no testing for contaminants. The tax also had significant resistance in both chambers of the legislature, with some lawmakers holding out for hours. Whitmer personally lobbied holdout lawmakers to get behind the tax increase after Republican House Speaker Matt Hall vowed the state government would shut down without the measure's passage. Marijuana has become a major industry in the state since recreational legalization was implemented in early 2020. Cannabis stores now make close to $300 million in sales a month and about $3.2 billion in 2024. But there's no cap on production or the number of business licenses available under state law, and a glut of supply has led the multi-billion-dollar industry to have some of the lowest prices in the nation. Steep competition has led to tough times for the sector, which is facing decline as some industry observers warn the market is approaching a saturation point after multi-year explosive growth. Whitmer, in pitching Rhodes' funding plan earlier this year, had initially called for a higher 32% wholesale tax. Well, this story is developing. It seems that this tax is not just people aren't just going to roll over and take this. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I hope that they win and kick this thing back. But it also sounds like the roads in Michigan must be pretty bad because they're really, really working to make this happen in a lot of different areas. So interesting. I'll toss it over to everybody else and see what they think.
Oh, man. I'm hopeful that they overturn this tax. This is crazy to me that they're trying to tax the roads. And it's very ironic that it came up to 420 million, and they're trying to get $2 billion to fix their roads in Michigan. And I'm sure that they have a lot of potholes, but I'm not sure that pot is going to be the filler.
That's a good one. We have a dispensary in Michigan, right on the border of Michigan and Indiana.
Oh wow,
which is doing pretty well.
I bet it is.
But you're exactly right that the last thing that we need is additional tax, because it's just going to make it even harder. And I don't think that licensed marijuana companies are doing very well in Michigan for many reasons. And this is not going to help. One of the things that we have seen, though, which could help, going back to some of our conversations a little bit ago, is there's legislation being put forth to make it clear that you could sell hemp beverages in Michigan, which would generate a decent amount of tax revenue, which is being something that's embraced. But to take the marijuana industry, which is sucking wind as it is, and adding a tax like this seems yet again misguided.
Well, that would be an easy expansion for Target, right? Because if they're already in Minnesota, you know, Michigan's right there. It's easy expansion for them to, you know, expand into that market if that was the case, Gary.
Yes, yeah, and Michigan's a market where they have said that they didn't want hemp-derived beverages, but there's nothing absolutely prohibiting it. In fact, there's a gap in the agencies. It's not even clear who would be responsible for it, because they moved from the Michigan Department of Agriculture to the CRA, which doesn't really care about hemp. So Michigan has been an interesting state, but keep in mind, Michigan's one of the earliest states to adopt adult use. So it is certainly a state which has had the products for many, many years, at least in dog year cannabis time. But I agree that this tax would make it very difficult to make money.
Well, it'd be going to make it difficult to make money, but apparently, from the analysis that I've been reading, is that even with this tax, they're still going to have cheaper prices than Ohio, and you know, and Michigan has been eating Ohio's lunch in sales in regards when it comes to cannabis, and so you know, the problem with it is that I just don't know if the people in Michigan are going to continue to shop at these stores. You know what I mean? It would make way more sense to me, and I've said this before, it would make way more sense that if they wanted to create a tax on cannabis, to make an out-of-state consumer tax, like a travel tax. So if you were coming in from Indiana, you were coming in from Ohio or any other state while you're visiting Michigan, then you would pay a higher price as opposed to the actual Michigan residents paying a higher price. Because I don't think that the economy is really suited for them to have a lot of price increases in Michigan as far as from the Michigan citizens. I mean, the economy is really tough out there.
Yeah, and not with the caregivers that they still have, and not with home cultivation permitted.
Exactly.
You know, I think they are definitely going to just put it back in the black market. And I think the statistics show, you know, state after state, these studies I've seen, that price is a big determining factor as to where people go to shop.
Yeah, no, I'm not so sure they could do what you just described, Jason. That may be a dormant commerce clause problem.
I said potential equal protection issue, and but yeah, I mean, they got great products and at great prices. I think it's something that it's worth for them to try out. I mean, these Democratic lawmakers do illegal things all the time that ultimately will get challenged in court. But I think it'd be something very easily to implement, because you have to show ID every time that you make a purchase at one of these places. So it's not like it's going to be hard for them to implement, to be able to quantify whether or not, or even do an audit to see if they're charging out-of-state residents the extra tax. You know what I mean? And maybe they call it a surcharge instead of a tax. And then all of a sudden now it's legal. You know, I don't know if it's much different than, I guess, in the medical states that have reciprocity that you either have to pay for or get, some other documentation from the state in order to purchase. But it just comes down to the fact this is an agricultural crop, and it's still selling way above market value for any other agricultural crop. And really, we need federal legalization in order to level the playing field throughout the country, and regulate and actually stabilize the industry, I think, as a whole.
Hawaii Sustainable in the chat. He says that they have a tourist fee there in Hawaii. So I'm not. I think it can be done that way. Granted, whether or not they're going to generate $420 million, I'm sure that they're not going to generate that much from it. But maybe they may get like 120 million. You know what I mean? But at the same time, these lawmakers always looking to cannabis to fill their budgetary gaps. I feel like they're looking at the wrong place.
Well, and I guess our dispensary would be a good example because we're right on the border. So we get a lot of people coming in from Indiana to buy the product, which in and of itself, from a compliance perspective, has caused me some pain because, you're basically selling to people and they're buying shit tons so they can then go over the border and do whatever they're doing with it.
Mm-hmm. Very all is interesting points on that. And on that, we're going to roll into our final commercial, and we are going to be right back.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's Joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that, they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
There we go. And we are back, and we're going to roll right in to our newest correspondent on the High at 9 News team, Mr. Gary Kaminsky. He's a regulatory compliance attorney with 39 years of experience working in highly regulated industries. For the past 10 years, Gary has focused his practice on cannabis in the cannabis space, advertising public multi-state operators, hemp beverage manufacturers, and other participants in the cannabis supply chain. Prior to that, Gary was a SEC enforcement attorney, in-house counsel for proprietary trading firms, broker-dealers, and a principal at several hedge funds. Gary's expertise in developing, implementing, and maintaining regulatory enterprise risk management systems to mitigate lapses that can cause disruption to clients' businesses. That's right, he is the fixer. It is none other than Mr. Gary Kaminsky.
Ray Donovan of cannabis.
Yeah.
So you, just so I understand, I'm reading this article right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Multi-state cannabis operator Ayr Wellness is undergoing a restructuring that will cut its debt in half, streamline operations, and enable the company to come out stronger under new ownership. Senior note holders led by Boston-based investment advisor Mill Street Capital Management have $387 million in credit to put towards purchasing Ayr Wellness's assets and give them ownership of the company. Representatives from Mill Street Capital Management could not be reached for comment. The restructuring expects to wrap up December, will reduce Ayr's debt load by more than 50% and ensure Ayr Wellness remains a strong player in the cannabis industry, according to CEO Scott Davidow. The debt holders are not just taking over the company, they're also committing an extra $50 million to help Ayr Wellness grow, especially in key markets like Virginia, where it plans to build retail, cultivation, and manufacturing facilities. Davidow sees a lot of potential. When I came to Ayr, I was struck by how much support we had from our debt holders, he said. They really get the industry and believe in what we're building. With over 2,000 employees and $463.6 million in annual revenue, Ayr Wellness is a major player in the cannabis industry. Davidow said he is confident that the streamlined approach will set up for growth. As part of the restructuring, Ayr Wellness is narrowing its focus to the markets and operation that make the most sense for its future. At a November 12th auction, the debt holders are likely to acquire Ayr Wellness's retail, cultivation, and manufacturing facilities in Florida, Ohio, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, as well as retail outlets in Nevada and Massachusetts. Our senior note holders are planning to participate in these auctions and bid on these assets to acquire the vast majority of the company, said David O., noting that it's possible another party may bid for some or all of the business. The company has already divested Massachusetts cultivation, manufacturing, medical-only Needham dispensary, Pennsylvania, 3 Pennsylvania natural stores and cultivation facility in Pottsville, Nevada cultivation and processing facility, New Jersey Lakewood cultivation facility, Connecticut 1 retail location. The sale of its 4 Illinois retail locations is pending state regulatory approval. Avis
Babulian.
Thank you. Sees Ayr's restructuring as part of a larger trend in the cannabis market. Babulian points out that the problem isn't the assets themselves, but how they're being used. The new owners must make changes that push the business into a consumer packaged good model. They can't keep operating the way they've been. There's been a dramatic shift, he said. Babulian also noted a common misstep among MSOs treating cannabis licenses as the business itself, rather than as a tool to enable a broader strategy. He expects to see strong interest for potential buyers other than the senior note holders. It's a distressed asset market right now. Anyone with cash is going to get a deal out of it. There's nothing wrong with any of these assets. The cannabis industry isn't for the faint of heart. Between complicated regulations, high operating costs, and the initial rush of overinvestment, it's been a bumpy ride for many companies. Ayr Wellness restructuring is part of a larger trend in the industry where only the strongest and smartest players are expected to survive. David O. compares it to other industries that went through similar shakeouts, like the cereal boom in the 1900s when more than 80 cereal companies in Battle Creek were reduced to 3. We're in a winnowing out phase. A lot of companies have big debts coming due. In 2026, it's not clear what the landscape will look like by then. We're being proactive to make sure we're ready to come with next. Ayr Wellness is pushing to finish its restructuring by the end of the year. The process involves state-by-state approvals for license transfers and asset sales, which can be slow, but the company is optimistic about the timeline. Its senior note holders are expected to take over most of the business, ensuring a smooth transition and a stable future. Despite the challenges, Ayr is looking ahead with confidence. David O. said, with a leaner operation, reduced debt, and the backing of experienced investors, the company is ready to tackle the next chapter in the cannabis industries. As Babulian put it, this isn't new. It's just happening on a larger, more public scale. The key now is for the new owner to make the right moves and unlock the potential for these assets. It's an article that is near and dear to me in the sense that I used to work at Ayr and I also worked at Acreage when they first went public and watched them incinerate $350 million and basically take their overpriced stock and try to buy every company that they could without any diligence or any wise. I think that some of this article seems to be accurate. I think the issue, though, is it's clear to me that if this weren't federally illegal, Ayr Wellness would have gone bankrupt a long time ago, as would have a number of these companies. They can't afford themselves of the bankruptcy code, so they have no choice but to continue to try to be a zombie company, as we call it in the securities business of sorts, where the stock is basically trading by appointment and where the market value is speculative. I do believe that they're going to liquidate this as best they can. I don't think these note holders are interested in running a business, particularly a licensed marijuana business, which is extremely complicated. And there are barriers, as we all know, to 280E, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think that this is somewhat of a candy coat of an issue that is, I agree, is going to continue to come up. And I think that there will be a winnowing of these businesses, but I don't believe it's like the cereal business. I believe that they just can't afford to keep open given the barriers that have been put up to the marijuana business across this country. I think that is one of the most interesting things between the hemp and marijuana, which are both legal artificial distinctions, since it's both cannabis sativa L is the plant. And I think that the notion that we should prohibit hemp, which is a nationwide interstate commerce, federally legal business, and put it back into the cannabis category, which is a failing model, makes no sense. And I think that this article highlights what a failing model it is. When I was at Ayr, they were just buying, and spending. I didn't necessarily know what the end game was, but I think that they felt that at some point somebody would just buy their company, and I think they were unable to service their debt while that was happening, because that is not happening anymore. So that's what I take from this article. Not to mention the fact that I think that cannabis companies continue to be aggressive in their public disclosure. And for some reason, I guess cannabis companies are allowed to do things disclosure-wise from an SEC perspective that others clearly can't.
Man, great perspective, Gary. Oh, man. Great addition to Mondays, bro. I mean, it's air. You know, it sounds like someone is letting all of the hot air out of air, and it is just deflating. You know, man, you know, and I like a lot of the guys at Ayr too, you know what I'm saying? First of all, so I'm not excited to hear about this, but I do agree with you in your assessment, Gary, that the only thing that's keeping them alive is the fact that you can't file for bankruptcy as a cannabis company. And I don't think a lot of these stockholders want to actually run a cannabis company either. And so, you know, they're going to piecemeal this thing off here, piecemeal that thing off there, and you know what I'm saying, other companies are going to grow, and I think a lot of these assets might actually just be more toxic assets, and finally they're just going to get their hand holding basically everything that is pretty much unsalvageable after this sell-off.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, look, I'm sure that there are some assets that could be had at a very distressed price that might be valuable for other companies that could use those assets. I know that they used the money that they raised to ramp up in some of these states in big ways. I watched it happen, and I just think that it just doesn't make sense for a private equity firm or a debt holder investor to try to run one of the most complicated industries in the world.
Yeah, and I honestly, I think it's happening in this state more than just Ayr. A lot of this, especially the new license holders, the people that are holding licenses and not doing anything, just kind of trying to be compliant, kicking down the can down the road, hoping for legalization and some sort of X potential out of it, especially the ones that had bought into this industry here in the state at exorbitant numbers compared to potentially what a license is going for today. So it's really created a really chaotic market here in the state of Florida, and I think obviously a lot of these are MSOs that are holding on to these licenses, hoping for this, you know, federal shift or statewide shift in Florida to go to adult use, as opposed to fighting over, you know, 900,000 patients.
Fair enough. Well, we did get a super chat in from the C Word, who says, I think of weed as a luxury item like champagne, cocaine, or gasoline. Big taxes are to be expected. C Word always got good jokes. Always got good jokes coming out of that guy. Constantly. Man, AYR, it sounds, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a good ending for AYR. I don't think it's going to be a good ending for the shareholders. Jesse, you have any thoughts on this before I move into our final story?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, I told you we're going to start the show off with a bang, and we're going to end it with a bang, because GOP senators discuss a federal ban on marijuana users owning guns as the Supreme Court considers taking up the issue. You guys, just what we were asking for earlier. Several Republican senators are questioning the federal ban on gun possession by people who use marijuana, with one saying that if alcohol drinkers can lawfully buy and use firearms, the same standard should apply to cannabis cannabis consumers. In a series of interviews with Marijuana Moment, the GOP lawmakers discussed the intersection of Second Amendment rights and the drug policy as the U.S. Supreme Court is considering taking up several pending cases on the issue, which centers around a federal statute known as Section 922G3 that some say is inconsistent with conservative principles, in a quote. Why would I have a problem with that any more than someone who drinks alcohol? Senator Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina, said of cannabis consumers being able to possess guns. Senator Dan Sullivan, Republican from Alaska, said that while he needs to look into the details of the specific pending legal cases before the Supreme Court, he's highly skeptical of the ban, given that marijuana is legal in my state, and my state probably has the most gun owners of any state in the country. A Second Amendment right can't be trumped by a statute, he said. That's why it's called a constitutional right. On the flip side, however, Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin, said that he broadly has a problem with all this legalization of marijuana in general and using cars, suggesting that he believes cannabis reform is associated with increased risk of traffic safety issues despite conflicting evidence. Obviously, you shouldn't be using a firearm if you're under the influence of anything, Johnson told Marijuana Moment. And to be clear, the several cases the High Court justices were scheduled to discuss at a closed-door meeting on Friday don't concern whether people who are actively intoxicated on marijuana or other substances should handle firearms. They have to do with the law that bars anyone who is a user of cannabis from even owning or purchasing a gun. Senator Cynthia Loomis, Republican from Wyoming, gave a more nuanced response to the question about the various cases pending before the Supreme Court on the issue, stating that if she was in the justice's position and wanted to duck the issue, she'd take up one the Justice Department has prioritized that involves cocaine as well as marijuana. But I haven't heard anything about it, she said. I think it will be revealing if they grant cert to one and not the other, she says. Sullivan, for his part, said that for cannabis reformers, the case the Trump administration is asking the justices to take up involving cocaine might not be the best test case you want. And meanwhile, a man who was prosecuted after admitting to lying about his marijuana use on a federal firearms purchasing form recently asked the Supreme Court to take up his matter, as the justices are actively considering several other cases on cannabis consumers' gun rights. The new petition to the High Court comes as the Justice Department is separately asking to dismiss one of multiple pending cases concerning marijuana and gun rights, in large part because it expects the justices to make a precedent-setting ruling on the issue. And in August, the 10th Circuit ruled that the government must prove that people who use marijuana, in quotes, pose a risk of future danger. And if it wants to justify applying a law banning cannabis consumers from owning firearms. The Justice Department appealed that ruling back in 2023, sending it to the 10th Circuit. And that three-judge panel said in a recent filing that they agree with much of the district's court analysis of the legal considerations, including its challenge to the federal government's claims that there is historically analogous precedent substantiating the firearm ban for cannabis consumers. Part of DOJ's argument was that the ban is historically consistent with prohibitions on gun ownership by people with mental illnesses, and the appeals court said the government cannot justify the current policy based on that standard. And the lower court largely based its initial decision on an interpretation of a Supreme Court ruling in which the justices generally created a higher standard for policies that seek to impose restrictions on gun rights. The ruling states that any such restriction must be consistent with historical context of the Second Amendment's original 1791 ratification, and the historical analogs that the Justice Department relied on to make the case that the ban is consistent included references to antiquated case law preventing Catholics, Loyalists, slaves, and Indians from having guns. The circuit court, for its part, said that the government must show non-intoxicated marijuana users pose a risk of future danger to support the current policy. And this inquiry which may involve fact-finding, is best suited for the district court. This opinion comes nearly a year after the 10th Circuit heard oral arguments in the case, with judges questioning not only firearms prohibition itself, but also whether it was within the scope of the appeals power to review the underlying lower court's decision. Ultimately, they determined that they did not possess that authority. And meanwhile, in the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the 11th District, judges recently ruled in favor of medical cannabis patients who want to exercise their Second Amendment rights to possess firearms. And as a recent report from the Congressional Research Services, known as the CRS, they explained the current legal landscape. A growing number of federal courts are now finding constitutional problems with the application of at least some parts of the firearms prohibition. In a July ruling, for instance, a 3-judge panel for the U.S. Court of Appeals on the 8th Circuit vacated a defendant's conviction and remanded the case back to the district court, noting that a retrial before a jury may be necessary to determine whether cannabis in fact caused a defendant to be dangerous or pose a credible threat to others. And this story goes on and on and on with a few other examples, but since we're running late on time, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
This has always been the case, right? We've talked about this so many times. We need equity and parity. People should not be. You don't get your guns taken away because you drink beer.
Well, you know, the C Word just threw in another super chat. He says, take driving licenses away from social drinkers.
Exactly. We don't have, that's why that word parity is so important, because with alcohol and tobacco and coffee and sugar, and these are all mind altering substances, but we don't punish people for using them in this kind of way.
Exactly.
You don't take their rights away because they use substances.
Exactly.
Or even worse, pharma. I mean, you have people driving every day on SSRIs and benzodiazepines, and like those things are really dangerous. That's probably the most dangerous thing in America is people on those drugs driving behind the wheel of a car. I mean, that's more dangerous than anybody with a gun.
Yeah. I totally.
I think one of the ironic things is that if you went back to the founders, they probably all smoked hemp. Hemp was the cash crop. For that built this country. So
exactly.
If you told them back then you can't use hemp and have a gun, they would have laughed.
You know, George Washington had an annual seed trading event every year at his house. And so, you know, when you look back at the history, you know, cannabis has played a large part in America's history, and the growth that we've had, and the fact that it's been under prohibition for so long is just pretty erroneous in my opinion.
It's absolutely insanity, and I think this is great. I hope they do take up one of these cases.
Me too.
And, you know, set the law of the land throughout the whole country and allow patients to be treated just like everybody else, anybody on opiates or anyone drinking alcohol, and just really stop the bias against people who use cannabis. I think that we're really, really coming close to getting to that period of time, and I think this is exciting.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you on this. I think it's fantastic news. Well, shoot 'em up, bang, bang. On a Monday, you guys. Pow, pow, pow. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. And big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And Cloud Media partners Elias and Kai are somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.